as he continues to stack tariff wins, allowing him to strengthen Social Security for U.S. citizens, the Canadian government is begging its pensioners to not take Social Security because we can't afford it. Security experts that Canada is becoming one of the largest risks to the American border.
Canadians have what has become almost a sense of entitlement. At least that's the way it's read here in Washington. That's kind of baffling and annoying to Americans.
Canada is furious after the United States tightened pressure at the border, detaining Canadians, increasing scrutiny, and linking security failures to trade consequences. Washington says Canada has become a route for drugs, illegal crossings, organized crime, and possible terror threats. Ottawa is outraged, but years of weak border enforcement helped create the crisis now hitting ordinary Canadians.
Canada was not serious about their border security. Federal officials called for renewed dialogue while Ontario Premier Doug Ford demanded retaliatory tariffs. So we have this story that just came out, some hilarious Canadian propaganda. Nearly 150 Canadians held in ICE custody this year, including 2 toddlers, data show.
Nearly 150 people connected to Canada were reportedly held in United States immigration custody during the year, including 2 young children. Canadian media naturally focused on the word Canadian because that makes the story sound like innocent tourists were randomly pulled from a shopping line. The details were less convenient. The material cited in these reports says more than 70% of those detained had criminal histories, while many of the remaining cases involved immigration violations.
Over 70% of the people detained and caught by ICE have criminal histories, so they're arresting criminals who just so happen to also have Canadian citizenship in the U.S. and deporting them.
The United States has every right to remove people who are inside its territory illegally or who present a legitimate security concern. Canadian citizenship is not a magic card that cancels American law. A Canadian passport does not give someone permission to overstay a visa, ignore immigration orders, commit crimes, or cross the border illegally. Ottawa may dislike the optics, but Washington's first responsibility is to protect people living in the United States.
The other 30%, it turns out, are on full immigration violations, basically have been staying there fully illegally, and just, again, also so happen to be foreign nationals with Canadian citizenship. So to see them title it...
The problem is that law-abiding Canadians will also pay the price. Families traveling for holidays may face longer questioning. Workers crossing regularly could face more inspections. Permanent residents may be asked for extra documents or large visa bonds. Businesses could experience delays. Truck drivers may be searched more aggressively. Millions of ordinary Canadians who have done nothing wrong could be treated with greater suspicion because Ottawa failed to deal with people who were abusing the system.
Ontario trucker, okay, so we're calling him an Ontario trucker, who hauled the cartel's fun powder to Canada, quietly pleads guilty in the U.S. The Indian national, okay, Ontario trucker, the Indian national was on a work permit in Canada.
That is how trust collapses. The consequences rarely stay limited to the criminals. Once American authorities believe Canada cannot properly screen entrants, remove inadmissible people, or stop smuggling networks, every person arriving from Canada becomes a slightly greater risk. Border officers do not have the luxury of assuming that every document tells the full story. They start checking everything, and suddenly, the friendly border Canada enjoyed for generations becomes a security barrier.
One of the economists is saying Canadians are acting too entitled in the negotiation, and we could end up being poorer than Mexico, which wouldn't be surprising based on what the security expert is saying, where Canada is importing a lot more of the crime, and we now could be seeing some of the turf wars start to develop on Canadian soil.
American officials have been building their case for months. They have raised concerns about fentanyl, human smuggling, illegal migration, terrorism, money laundering, and organized crime using Canada as an entry point. Canadian officials often respond by saying the amount crossing from Canada is smaller than the amount coming through the southern border. That may be true, but it is also a weak excuse. A smaller security problem remains a security problem.
Ottawa pressed to factor in 500,000 undocumented residents as it consults on immigration targets. So they're now wanting to open pathways to accept that it's normal, that people are just staying over their visa times. They're staying in Canada illegally. They're coming to Canada illegally.
Imagine telling your neighbor that he should ignore someone entering through his back window because more burglars use the front door. That is basically Ottawa's defense. Yes, the southern border is larger and more dangerous. Yes, Mexico faces deeper cartel violence. None of that gives Canada permission to become the easier alternative route. The northern border should be secure because Canada claims to be a reliable ally, not because its failures are slightly less dramatic than somebody else's.
Almost 50 million in fun powder found hidden in trucks crossing into Canada from the US. To be fair, that's coming from the US. It is actually coming from Mexico, funny enough, which is why I said Trump's statement at the beginning.
A security analyst described Canada as a possible last-mile location for drug processing. According to that explanation, cocaine paste can enter Canada and be converted into finished powder. Fentanyl can be completed in pill form. Those drugs can then move south across a border that is much less heavily policed than the United States-Mexico boundary. Some shipments can also leave Canadian ports for markets such as Australia and New Zealand.
The Indian national was a work permit in Canada when he started hauling loads of fun powder. Ayush Sharma, 25, was caught red-handed delivering 19 kilos of fun powder into a garage in Montreal.
That distinction matters because this should not become an excuse to blame entire ethnic or immigrant communities. Criminal organizations are the problem. Weak screening is the problem. Corrupt networks are the problem. People who immigrate legally, follow the rules, work, and raise families are not responsible for the actions of smugglers who happen to share their nationality. Ottawa's failure comes from refusing to separate legitimate immigration from criminal exploitation.
He was just on a work permit, which was why I freak out about those temporary foreign workers. This is a warning to the US. These guys will scam you. They will come through on the temporary foreign worker scams.
Canada dramatically expanded its temporary and permanent population while its enforcement system remains slow, underfunded, and confused. The federal government welcomed huge numbers of newcomers without ensuring that housing, healthcare, background checks, border resources, removal systems, and law enforcement capacity could handle the pressure. Then officials acted surprised when criminal networks saw the same opportunity everybody else could see.
All of this crime, and Canada is taking the blame. The US is getting mad at Canada. This is affecting our trade deals. This is affecting our economy. They shouldn't be here. They are destroying Canadian society and destroying our reputation with the US.
The people running these networks do not care about migrants, Canadians, or Americans. They care about payment. They will abandon families in freezing temperatures, hide people in vehicles, and lie about the risks. A serious government attacks those networks aggressively. It tracks payments, arrests organizers, improves intelligence sharing, and removes people using Canada as a staging point for illegal entry into the United States.
Donald Trump to put pressure on the Canadian government to clean up the border. This is all while we're seeing the amount of Canadians being arrested by ICE continue to increase.
Ottawa's soft and delayed approach sends the opposite message. It tells criminal groups that Canada offers legal complexity, slow court processes, weak removals, and endless opportunities to appeal. That may sound compassionate inside a government press release. To an organized smuggler, it sounds like a business opportunity. The United States has now started responding with tougher enforcement. That includes more detentions, increased deportations, stricter questioning, and possible financial requirements for some travelers. Reports have discussed visa bonds of up to $15,000 American dollars for certain permanent residents. Think about what that means. A lawful person may have to prove financial reliability because Washington no longer fully trusts the immigration documents issued by Canada.
The Indian national was a work permit in Canada when he started hauling loads of fun powder. Ayush Sharma, 25, was caught red-handed delivering 19 kilos of fun powder into a garage in Montreal. When the U.S. Department of Justice unveiled Operation Dead Hand in Los Angeles in January, there were 15 people named, 2 indictments, including 5 living in Canada. So, Where are they from? Oh, Brampton-based. Oh, what a surprise.
Canadian officials are furious because this undermines the value of Canadian status. But the United States did not promise that every person admitted by Canada would automatically be trusted by America forever. Each country controls its own border. If Washington believes Canada's screening has weakened, it will create its own filters. Ottawa can call that insulting. American border officials will call it risk management. The tariff issue makes everything more dangerous. The United States initially imposed 25% tariffs across major categories of Canadian goods. The material later described an increase to 35%, with Washington connecting the pressure to Canada's failure to meaningfully address drug trafficking and money laundering. Canada responded with plans for $155 billion in counter tariffs.
The only countries that were putting on counter tariffs was China and Canada. Canada has been accused of having infiltration from China. China has been interfering in our elections and with our government, and we were the only country that partnered with China on counter tariffs. And like he said, that's not forgotten in this town.
Canadian politicians presented retaliation as courage. Perhaps it was necessary politically, but it does not fix the original problem. A tariff does not catch a smuggler. A patriotic speech does not inspect a shipping container. Removing American alcohol from store shelves does not identify a trafficking network. It may make politicians feel strong while Canadian workers lose contracts and consumers pay more.
That is something that's going to linger in terms of our relationship with the U.S.
I think a lot of Canadians are in this space right now where they almost feel like they're being bullied by Washington. But are there things that Canada has done or not done that have actually created the situation where it's easy to take advantage of us?
Well, in terms of bullying, welcome to the club.
Canada's economy depends heavily on the United States. Vehicles and components can cross the border several times during production. Agricultural products move through deeply integrated supply chains. Canada supplies oil, potash, lumber, metals, and manufactured goods. The United States supplies investment, technology, machinery, food, and access to the world's largest consumer market. A border slowdown damages both countries, but Canada feels the pain faster.
For some reason, on the Canadian side, there is this superiority complex where we don't need America and they have to deal with us. I have no idea how that became a talking point. The talking heads continued because of, and he brings it up too, with the potash and a couple of the oil things. These are minor things that America can find their way around.
A Canadian trade expert admitted that the country does not have much leverage. Canada has valuable resources, but threatening to withhold them is more complicated than politicians pretend. Washington can search for alternative suppliers, invest in domestic production, remove sanctions on other producers, or simply absorb higher costs longer than Canada can. Ottawa keeps acting like friendship guarantees favorable treatment. Washington is saying that access to its market now has conditions.
In this clip here, we have one of the main trade negotiators talking about how Canada has been acting entitled during the trade negotiations. Not only that, warning about Canada's economic impacts if we do not protect the border, how trade negotiations mean we are going to end up with tariffs. He's the only one who I've seen.
One of those conditions is security. The United States does not want to spend northern border money at the same level it spends on the southern border. For decades, Canada's greatest value was reliability. Goods moved quickly because the two countries trusted each other. Police agencies cooperated. Travelers crossed with limited friction. If Canada becomes a security burden, that economic advantage disappears.
The exceptionalism that we feel, that we've historically felt with the U.S., is the first thing we've got to lose if we're going to deal with this administration. Canadians have what has become almost a sense of entitlement. At least that's the way it's read here in Washington. That's kind of baffling and annoying to Americans.
Ottawa also faces criticism over money laundering. Canadian real estate, casinos, shell companies, luxury goods, and financial structures have repeatedly been discussed as tools for hiding criminal money. The country even earned the embarrassing phrase snow washing, describing how suspicious money could appear clean after passing through Canada's respectable image. That reputation is now colliding with American concerns about drugs and organized crime. Canadian officials also complain that the United States is exaggerating the threat. In some cases, it probably is. Washington has political incentives to use dramatic language. Claims about terrorists, fentanyl, and border chaos can support tariffs and stronger negotiating demands. American leaders are not presenting these concerns out of pure kindness. They are using Canada's weaknesses as leverage.
What kind of leverage does Canada have in these negotiations with the U.S.?
Not much. Obviously, if you look at oil, we supply a great deal of oil. There's certain regions of the
By the way, this guy is negotiating on behalf of the Canadian side. And when the interviewer said, what kind of leverage do Canadians have in the negotiations? He said, not much.
That does not make the underlying problems fake. Ottawa's favorite defense is to attack the messenger because answering the message would require admitting failure. The United States can be aggressive and Canada can be negligent at the same time. Washington can exploit the issue politically while Ottawa remains responsible for giving it useful evidence. The reported threat involving the 1908 Boundary Convention takes this conflict into much more serious territory. That agreement helped stabilize the roughly 9,000-kilometer border. Walking away from it would create uncertainty around a relationship Canadians considered settled. Older agreements from 1818 and 1846 would still matter, but the political signal would be explosive. The United States is protecting its interests. Sometimes it is doing so fairly. Sometimes it is using excessive pressure. Canada's job is not to complain that America has become mean. Canada's job is to become competent enough that American pressure loses its justification.
2 men convicted after immigrants froze to death at Canada-US border face sentencing. So this is a separate smuggling group. Here's this family here. Notice they're from a certain country, a certain background. Let's see who the culprits were. We've got Harsh Kumar Patel and Steve Shand, couple strong Canadians there who were trying to bring these people illegally into the US.
That means controlling entry properly. It means knowing who remains after visas expire. It means removing dangerous and inadmissible people within a reasonable period. It means targeting smugglers and money launderers. It means inspecting ports intelligently. It means cooperating with American agencies while defending Canadian sovereignty. Most importantly, Ottawa must stop pretending that every criticism of immigration enforcement is an attack on immigrants. Immigrants who follow the rules benefit from a secure system. They do not benefit when criminals exploit Canadian documents, when smugglers abuse desperate families, or when foreign networks damage Canada's international reputation.
I just take it from here to drop over the border. That's it.
And we go Vermont or we go to New York?
New York.
That's me meeting up with a criminal who thinks he's about to illegally smuggle me across the border into the United States.
So here's my problem with this. The government recognizes that foreign entrepreneur as a Canadian.
Canada is furious because its citizens are being detained and its border relationship is being rewritten. Some of that anger is justified. Innocent Canadians should not be treated like criminals. Children should be handled humanely. Legal travelers deserve fairness and due process, but anger cannot replace accountability. The United States did not create Canada's undocumented population. It did not design Canada's bail system. It did not cause years of delayed deportations. It did not underfund Canadian border enforcement or allow immigration growth to outrun government capacity. Those decisions were made in Ottawa. Now, American authorities are responding in the way Ottawa should have expected. They are putting their own citizens first. They are detaining people they believe violated their laws. They are increasing scrutiny at the border. They are connecting trade privileges to security cooperation. Canada can object to the tactics, but it cannot act confused about the cause.